divergent about moving buildings in the Soviet Union, I guess, in the 60s and 70s by rail. And I had never seen this. It interests me because when I went to fifth grade in Grundy County, Illinois, it was called Hume School. And it was actually 3 buildings. 2 of them were old one-room school buildings that were used for our school, and then a brick building that was used. That brick building was 7th and 8th grade. There was 4th, 5th, and 6th in one building. And then I don't even know if they had kindergarten, but it would have been kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So they moved 2 buildings. I know they moved buildings in the 60s. And that's what we're trying to get to. And I'm going to be showing you through the missiles and rockets and the mafia and everything else. And good to see you, Brother Luther. So before we will get to this video and just see how they were moving things in the 60s. So I know they can move houses. I went to school somewhere where they actually moved 2 one-room school houses, and they are about the size of a house today. So, but I've never seen this.
Moscow in the Soviet Union times, and we see how people were moving buildings on railway, like on the same type of track that trains would use or similar, and they would move buildings from one place to the other, or they would move an old building to build a new, more like uglier building. And my question is, was this technology there beforehand? Like, were these buildings built previously on top of these tracks, or did they build them afterwards? Or some of the buildings are actually old style, but some of the buildings are actually communist style. And I've seen this in America as well, in Australia, so it's not the only place. So my question is, why is nobody doing this today? How come the humanity of the 80s and 70s, maybe the 60s, because those were the Soviet Union days, how come they were doing this and they were moving buildings? Why were they moving buildings and today they're actually demolishing them? Why? I don't understand. And how come did they have this technology back in the day? Like, and why not today? So many questions arise. Anyway, you have the pictures, some better than the others. I'm sure you're probably going to find more, but you tell me, because I don't have any explanation on why they would do this. Why not demolish everything? I mean, they demolished so many of the old buildings that they were using like free energy, that free electromagnetic energy. They were just demolished. Why didn't they move those buildings? Like, just move them and that's it, and then you have them for the rest of your life. And then they say that the Soviet Union was all bad. I mean, look at that. Where did you see this technology of moving entire buildings? And imagine that in those buildings, they were like, the apartments and places, the residences of people with all the belongings and stuff. And you just move a building like that. You just move, and that's it. I'm just wondering why they were moving these buildings. The globe bird spinning in space with curved water and gravity was spinning, and these guys were moving the buildings while the earth was spinning, and the buildings were not falling because they were be attached to the surface of the earth, which is a curvature with gravity. Yay, bravo. I respect for the globe earth. I'm a globe earther. I live on a globe, and that's it. Hey, I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, if you have any intelligent replies regarding to moving buildings, both pre-communist and post-communist, then let me know in your comments. And
Well, I thought that was pretty interesting. And we know he's not a globe earther, but I do think it was funny that he was trying to act like if you could jack it up on a rail and then just let the earth spin underneath it. I think that's where he was trying to go with that. Let's look at a couple of the comments. This is a brand new video. And here's this guy. He says, I've been a stonemason for over 37 years now. I can see this done only with historic buildings that used megalithic sized foundation blocks. And then Jonathan Lopez, they still do. They actually have a show dedicated to it. if I'm not mistaken, the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City is being moved right now. Really? Because we've seen some John Levy movement, and it doesn't seem like they're moving it. The Mormons don't follow religion. They devote their life to Lucifer. Well, good job of getting in on that one right there. But are you guys familiar with, have you seen these pictures? It looks like they're getting these buildings and just turning them and fitting them right in where they need to go. I have no idea. But that's really not what I was going to talk about tonight. We had talked yesterday about Operation Underworld and how mysterious things were during World War II and how quickly they had to bring in the mafia because nothing was getting done on the loading docks. And, you know, they weren't really in control of the United States as they thought they were. So it's all going to tie in. We're going to get, you know, we'll eventually have to get back to that someday, but we're going to start with rockets because my contention is that, yeah, that guy does. He's really a flat earther. I thought he just went crazy on that last bit of that video that, you know, it was his way of mocking. And I think he's English as a second language. So something, you know, that's not what he's usually like. So as part of the of what we can do to trace, because, you know, I've seen it before, when were these resets, when, you know, how far back can we go and trust history? All I'm saying is I know in the 60s I went to school, because we lived in the country. I went to a 3-room school, and I know that they had moved 2 of those buildings in. And it sounded like just a decade or 2 when they started, you know, putting them all together instead of still using them separately. But I've never seen them moved on the rail trains like that. But what it did lead to, and it might be a plot hole, because I do believe that they were, you know, and I included math in the title because of quantum physics and their need for atomic weapons, nuclear power, and how that tied in with what I know about hydrogen peroxide, medical grade hydrogen peroxide, and how that was used from NASA all the way back to the very founding of missiles. So once, no, what am I thinking? So once they started doing the regular rocketeering of black powder, of like what you would use in a regular bottle rocket, when they looked for more oomph and they went to what they, you know, say, you know, like a liquid fuel as compared to a solid rocket booster, they were still using steam power up into the Redstone missiles of the Mercury. So we have to go through the missiles, and you have to keep in mind, you know, the founders of it, you know, what we know about them. They were all into, you know, demons and everything else. But so we have to go over this quick review of the missiles in America. And you know, is there some bad news going on here? Oh, Luther's has a brother that worked at Area 51, and well, I still say hats off to him if he quits without getting vaccinated. And I want to say hi to Becca. She left me a question on a video earlier today, and I didn't see it till afterwards. And it was one about, you know, there's Mudflood, but then there's these, you know, there had to be another one too for the reaping. at the end of the 1,000 years, when the wheat and the tares, they send in a, somebody, sends in a sickle, and they reap them out. The Bible does talk about a number of floods, and it makes, a point of emphasizing that it's Noah's flood that will never happen again. One where there's only the survivors that are in the ark, and everything else, creeping, crawling, living on the earth, dies. So the earth dwelling. But it talks about numerous floods and things like that, and getting them all sorted out is where we're going tonight. And we're going to be jumping off by starting on missiles, getting a little history on that, and see if I can't tie it in and end up with a Bible study. So these were some missiles that World War II, and I wondered what they were using, because I hadn't seen these type of missiles either. I know that they weren't using black powder, so I wonder if these were like a prelude to a smaller version of the V2 missile, that led to the Gemini missile. Because basically, everybody was in on Operation Paperclip, and taking those people who were familiar with working with hydrogen peroxide as a rocket fuel. And so it's hard to find out, but notice that this is Russian, but it's a Studebaker. That we were friends with the Russians. Couldn't have done it without the missiles, the mini rockets. And that, I think, is the plot hole. They invented the quantum physics and everything else so that they could fake, going to space. But did they really expect the Earth to be a globe? That I'm not sure of. Those are things I don't know, but we do know when it was happening, and where did they get their idea for, this type of rocket, and why don't they get in? You can see here, it doesn't say anything about, the propellant rocket variants. Just talks about the type of warhead, but nothing about, was it hydrogen peroxide? What was its propellant? This seems pretty clear. This was the predecessor, the Hwacha. And these have, like you can see on the other side, they got rockets on the other side. They go in these holes. That could probably be black powder. That's just that is a, they even use those at some of those Antifa riots today, bottle rockets. It started out, it looks like, as a more of a bottle rocket type of a rocket. The Congreve rocket, this interests me, because when you hear every time they have the football games or the basketball games or whatever you're into, where you used to have to stand up and put your hand over your heart and pledge allegiance and listen to the national anthem. I'm 98% sure those were Congreve rockets when they saw the rocket's red glare. Congreve rocket was a type of rocket artillery designed by British inventor Sir Bill Congreve in 1804. There has been much discussion of whether or not the Congreve war rocket was a British or Indian invention. The design was based upon rockets deployed by the Kingdom of Mysore in India. But that was way back in the 1399. This was a state from 1799 to 1950, the Kingdom of Mysore. East India Company in there again during the Second, third and fourth wars. They needed that area bad. Royal Artillery. Somebody got these Congrave rockets. What are they? There's Bill. Oh, there's the rocket in the background. That's the rocket's red glare. Exploding Polish Congrave rockets. That's 1831. They were still using those. This was more a Russian soldier depicted using a Congrave rocket. Probably still looks like they're going with the black powder. You know, they always got the best designers to do their uniforms because people would go like, oh, they love a man in uniform. Not a lot of real close-ups of the Congrave. There we go. Well, that's just a glorified thing from the Wachow. Just put an arrow on it. Except they got a little ordnance exploding now. That's pretty good. Got all the way down to your regular bottle rocket. Look at this one's got an umbrella on it. That's your first Willie Pete, white phosphorus. Shoot it up there, and now we can fight at night. Hey, see, now here's a 32-pound rocket that was used in 1813. So that, you know, wasn't the Star Spangled Banner written in 1814? The rocket's red glare, or was that 1812? They're surrounding me. So it was probably something like this. If you were ever wondering about what's the rocket's red glare, and you know, I've talked to a few of you, and I know some of you guys, and you guys are always wondering about something. So I can't imagine you've gone through life not wondering what kind of rocket's red glare did they have back then. Do they mean cannons? Because we were supposed to, you know, just have small cannons and tomahawks. Well, there you go. There's how they used the rockets from the boats back there when they wanted to attack it. This was basically your small rocket boat. Looks like it could double as a lifeboat. They put them on the big ships too. Shoot those rockets out. Do you see those metal rockets being fired in 1813? This is a rocket patch. You've heard of the Rocket Man. Well, that's your rocket patch. Got a little 33 written under here from Portugal. Not too suspicious about the 1 in the 832. I've always thought that was interesting to make that 8 look like that where you don't close it. Right. I don't see any sign of the confusion of the U and the W. They're basically using straight up grammar. Whatever that means. What's this? More rockets. Basically, your history of your rocket technology. That's your M27, M270, MLRS. You're going to shoot that rocket right out of it. I think they just aim them in a general direction. And so that basically is the history of it right there. Yikes, that one's about to hit a horse. So that's pretty much agreed down here. So World War II, they picked it up a little bit. Then they put them on some planes. We were a little bit behind in the rocket power. Let me see if I have any questions. Check the thing here. I'm going to look up something. So give me a second. What was I going to look up? I better see if I need to make a, prove, I guess, that it can be used as a, what's rocket fuel? How is hydrogen peroxide used as a rocket fuel? The simplest rocket is a monopropellant rocket. It works in the following way. The liquid hydrogen is fed with high pressure from a tank to a chamber filled with a decomposition catalyst. The decomposition catalyst causes the hydrogen peroxide to decompose into water, steam, and oxygen, because that's what basically it is. Heat is released by the reaction. The temperature of the formed gas mixture is about 650 degrees Celsius. That's hot. It's way. That's like 5 times boiling. After passing through the catalyst chamber, the hot, high-pressure gas mixture is released through a rocket nozzle, a small hole that lets it escape from something called a vacuum. The velocity of the gas flow after the nozzle becomes well over 1,000 m/s and gives the rocket a considerable thrust. So here you could even click here and see how much you need. It also, a bipropellant liquid fuel rocket, that's still its base. Red fuming nitric acid, no toxic fumes, not corrosive. Let's see, we add something else to it. Liquid hydrogen, maybe that's something like despite criticisms and early technical failures, the taming of liquid hydrogen proved to be one of NASA's most significant technical accomplishments. Hydrogen, a light and extremely powerful rocket propellant, has the lowest molecular weight of any known substance and burns at 5,500 degrees Fahrenheit. In combination with an oxidizer such as liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen yields the highest specific impulse or efficiency in relation to the amount of propellant consumed. So that still does lead to the question. We know that they used, how long did they use them? I know that the Redstone missiles were all Redstone missiles. That's your Redstone, Jupiter, C, Mercury, and the Jupiter. This is just for comparison. Here's your Redstone. It actually, except for that cone, looks like the tallest. Family of rockets consisted of a number of American ballistic missiles, sounding rockets, and expendable launch vehicles operational during the 1950s and 1960s. Juno 1, the first U.S. orbital satellite in 1958, And the Mercury Redstone variation carried the first 2 astronauts into what they call low Earth orbit nowadays. The rocket was named for the Redstone Arsenal in Alabama. It says suborbital flights there. They'll admit that. It was that was 56, 57. Does it talk about its power? Here it just mentions that 2 members of the Saturn family rockets, the Saturn 1 and 1B, were derived from the Redstone. They used 8 tanks built on Redstone tooling clustered around 1 propellant tank built on Jupiter missile tooling to utilize 8 Rocketdyne H-1 Jupiter engines to form the first stage of the rocket. Oh, they called one Sparta. So this is, I think, basically just a big steam engine that they have it sealed in a vacuum, like the vacuum of space. And then when they open up a little hole in it and directionally put it the way they think it gets supposed to go, it's supposed to take it straight up. Propellants, they mix them up. They don't want to just tell you, it's condensed hydrogen peroxide like the kind you buy at the store. They want to make it, harder. This one burned ethanol. All these designs, like the V2, that's the Nazi one that we had to try to figure out. Burned ethanol, but other fuels have also been experimented with: kerosene, diesel oil, paint thinner, JP4 and JP5. Cluster tanks of fuels. This is a pretty good one here, showing how they want us to believe that they can do that and then send it up to the moon. Let's see, rocket engines. Thank you all for being patient with me here. I'm going to try one more thing and just see one more thing. So this is what they used it for. They still do it. They're called, that's hydrogen peroxide, helping a 30 rockets, it says, to do it. But, it says it's hydrogen peroxide. I'm going to look it up in YouTube. Hopefully we see. This wasn't that exciting. I don't want to listen to the jet assisted takeoff from Wikipedia, but I do want to go to that page. I guess that's it. Huh. I'm shocked that that's not there, and they're not showing you that Wikipedia has it. Assisted takeoff. Well, wow, I'm glad you didn't have to see me looking that up. Man, I feel like that I just really wasted that. But hey, thank you, John. I really wanted that one, with Eric and everything. It is coming down to, there's the Lord Jesus Christ, and then there's everything else. But their catch-all for everything else is go to Atlantis. It's got something for everybody. You're all going to make it or be reincarnated. It's just really not the way to go. So maybe we'll get back to some of those rockets and things like that. I know we will on another day. But right now, I want to move it up because it's all about how did World War II end? Fake math for fake quantum physics to make fake atomic weapons. It was, Operation Underworld, and the mafia was in on it as early as 1942. The United States, quote unquote, government at the time realized it couldn't win the war, couldn't get anything done unless the mob helped. So they went to Lucky Luciano for help. And all they could basically do was work together with Russia, Great Britain, the United States to beat Japan, because it was Japan that not only on December 7th, which was already December 8th in Japan, they were attacking the Philippines, in India, Burma. They took over more in that one day than Germany ever took over in their blitzkriegs. And there became a merger with Italy and everybody else, because in the strive to see who was going to win the eugenics race war, it was Japan, unless everybody worked together to beat them. And China just set back with Mao Zedong and the communists, because they had the capitalists, Chiang Kai-shek, and the communists sitting back, faking a civil war, while all of the other Axis powers, because China was an Axis power, but everybody just considered them like, well, because Manchuria was already controlled by Japan since 1931. So that is the major and most majority part of what we call China today. Japan had been in charge of for a decade, and dealing with other countries, embassies in the United Nations, and the whole show. So how did the World War II end? How did they fake it? Well, it ended with rockets, blitzkriegs, secret treaties, and a pincer movement. This is what is basically the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, is the end of World War II. And this is how it went down. because it was a merger tag team against the Japanese, who had won that whole racist eugenist in between the war stuff. And notice it doesn't say the Soviet invasion of the Japanese occupied Manchuria, because it was its own country. They gave it a puppet government. Steven Spielberg made a movie about it, except they called it The Last Emperor of China or something like that. It began on August 9th, 1945, and they had to because of treaties, as we'll see. The Soviet invasion of the Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo. It was the largest campaign of the 1945, 1 year, Soviet-Japanese War. How long did it last? Well, it started soon after midnight on August 9th. We'll get to that. No, I want to see it now. I got to know. You got to know. Just how long did this last? Was a military conflict within the Second World War beginning soon after midnight. Mark that in your memory, August 9th, with the Soviet invasion. We've heard all this before. Now, when did it end, though? Because we want to pick that up later. But we might as well just jump in right now that at the Tehran Conference, as early as 1943, this was already planned because they knew they were going to have to wait a month, and then, somebody was going to be protected. Let me get a drink and then I'll continue reading. At the Tehran Conference in November 1943, Stalin agreed that the Soviet Union would enter the war against Japan once Germany was defeated. And they spent the rest of the time setting up a pincer movement. At the Yalta Conference in February 1945, Stalin agreed to Allied pleas to enter World War II. So that's February of 45. Now, when did this war start? August 9th. August 9th. But he agreed to enter that war as early as February. Stalin agreed to Allied pleas to enter the Pacific Theater within 3 months of the end of the war in Europe. On July 26th, the U.S., U.K., and China made the Potsdam Declaration, defining terms for Japanese surrender. They wanted it unconditional. First time, I think, I remember history, mostly they negotiate. An ultimatum calling for the Japanese surrender that, if ignored, would lead to their prompt and utter destruction. Oh, you see, now they put in, the commencement of the invasion fell between the U.S. atomic bombings. No, it didn't. What it did was it went back and rewrote. It added these to history to make the rewrite. Because there's no quantum physics that would allow for vacuums to exist in space and Earth and still have rockets, and 97% of matter is dark matter. We can't see it, but we know it's there. It's all faked. So basically, the whole war, we're going to find out, was that week of when they dropped the bomb on August 6th and August 9th. Started on the 6th, finished Nagasaki on the 9th. The war started. And you can't believe this lie, because we know that Stalin had now 4 known spies in their allies' Los Cruces, New Mexico site there, where they were developing the bomb. That's why they can say virtually nothing and give them plausible deniability. So the war, August 8th, 1945, informed the Japanese ambassador that the Soviet Union had declared war on Japan, and that from the 9th, the United States was not dropping a bomb on Nagasaki or Hiroshima or anywhere else. And that from August 9th, the Soviet government would consider itself at war with Japan. At 1 minute past midnight, Trans-Baikal time, the Soviets commenced their invasion simultaneously on 3 fronts. Why 3 fronts? Well, because the other front was an ocean. The operation was subdivided into smaller operational and tactical parts. Yeah, right. So it looks like it lasted until September 2nd. So from August 9th to September 2nd, they finished off the number 1 army. This is where it wasn't on Guadalcanal or Iwo Jima that, you know, the stall that we kept going island hopping and everything else. You know, that wasn't the real battle. That wasn't their real troops. Everybody was in their China because that's what they wanted to protect. But you can see it was all set up from the very beginning. So how did they finish them off in such a short time? Well, they had 2.5 years of just acting like they didn't care to Japan to surround them and then come in with this pincher movement from all 3 sides, probably one of the only real unplanned, unscripted battles of what they call World War II. Red Army's got a cemetery there. Largest campaign. It was the largest campaign which resumed hostilities between the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republic and the Empire of Japan after almost 6 years of peace. It looks like in 1983, the operation has sometimes been called Operation August Storm. There's just now understanding the significance of it in their military history worlds. Soviet gains on the continent were Manchukuo, Mingyang, now in Inner Mongolia, and Northern Korea. The Soviet entry into the war and the defeat of the Lotang army was a significant factor in the Japanese government's decision to surrender unconditionally. A significant factor in the Japanese government's decision to surrender unconditionally, as it made it apparent the Soviet Union had no intention of acting as a third party in negotiating an end to hostility on conditional terms. We needed to have been the heroes that saved the world from utter destruction, but also left it a world that would have to fear forever imminent possible worldwide mass destruction. And that's the fear that they needed your pineal gland in. So that is what, that's where that's going. You know, well, here's another question from Matt G that just popped in. You know, where is the camp of the saints at? Well, wouldn't Satan like to know too? So to make it easier for Gog and Magog to go circling the earth to find them. Oh, we'll find out where the camp of the saints is at when the Lord wants us to know. In the meantime, Your guess is as good as theirs, but God will provide it. You know, right now, who knows where it is? Who knows what, you know, is it a symbolic city? Is it metaphoric? Is it in the heart of every believer? It's something that we're going to need to know. So they got all of this done, though, with secret treaties. Secret treaties, you know, and they have treaties today, and they have Taiwan in the news today. Do you think China hasn't forgot about this? Because basically the reason that China set back was because Great Britain, with the power of these other armies, forced 2 heroin wars on them. They, you know, the Boxer rebellions, the Opium Wars. It's always been about them growing heroin and then getting people addicted to become slaves. And there's 2 types of people in this world: the ones that are going to be awakened by the Holy Spirit of God to what's going on, and those who are going to be like, this could be a judgment of God, but I hate God for it, and not repent. We'll never understand them. We'll never understand them. And I don't know why I wanted to bring up these other tabs, but I did. And we'll just, let's stick with them for a little bit. We're going to do a Bible study. What is the CRISPR? Clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats is a family of DNA sequences found in the genomes of prokaryotic organisms such as bacteria and archaea. These sequences are derived from DNA fragments known as bacteriophage that had previously infected the prokaryote. They are used to detect and destroy DNA from similar bacteriophage during subsequent interactions. And look at these bacteriophage. Don't they look like a little landing unit for your Apollo landing? Kinda. Just a little bit. Then this comes down and injects the DNA. This is the best they can do to show us what they think a bacteriophage works like. Yeah, there you go. He did it. The guy with looks like a premature Graves' disease, if you ask me. Something's going on there. I don't want to. This wasn't one of the ones, you know, that's just, hey, it looks like a Apollo lander. So what are you going to do here? They're going to put these in food, people. They're going to start putting these in full. In Fool's food. This was only a Nobel Prize in 2020, you know, these CRISPR technology, man. They want to put it in your green beans. You know, help you get smarter by eating a better lettuce. They got all these CRISPR patterns. Just something I wanted you to look at. They got that going on. What's this? Take care. Hey, I thought we were going to do Bible studies later. This one's got to go over here. We got to get into, you know, we've got to understand what they're saying, how they say it, what they mean. Words matter. There's all types of different tenses and the way people talk. And, you know, I recently have had a big batch of things I've said just twisted out of their grammatical tense and sense. So I think, you know, we have to be aware of, you know, where you read things is not always the way they're said. Tenses generally express time relative to the moment of speaking and things like that. So we can also track languages because some languages have tenseless languages. In linguistics, a tenseless language is a language that does not have a grammatical category of tense. Tenseless languages can and do refer to time, but they do so using lexical terms such as adverbs or verbs, or by using combinations of aspect and mood. Burmese, most varieties of Chinese, some Greenlandic. So there's tenseless languages. There's also this is one of the ones I wanted to make a point of tonight. V2 world order, verb second word order, places the finite verb of a clause or sentence within the second position of a single constituent preceding it. This is very common in your German languages. And I think that, I honestly believe that we can eventually figure out and track some of the languages because, it's really not that hard to get a grasp on some of the people, that, well, when they're done talking and they want you to see if you agree, they'll just do something like, you get it, right? Well, at least every cowpoke wannabe girl in Colorado is practically every question, and they're not really looking for validation. They're saying this is self-evident validation, right? But it's different than going like, that horse is really good, right? Or anything like that. You can ask it like in a form of a question, right? Or right? Other in other languages, you can track them, like Tagalog, the Philippine languages, and some of their other languages. They'll point with their lips, And so if you're a bunso, one of the youngest member of a Filipino family, if somebody, they might be telling you, get over there, or, because they'll say something at a motion with their mouth. And from my son, when he was at the Presidio, he had to learn a language, and they gave him an easy one, Tagalog. And they expect you to learn those motions with your mouth, at least compared to at least that's what he told me. So I'm ready to go and study any of these things. But basically, oh yeah, we had the Bible study. If you guys have any other questions, now's the time to ask them. I watched a Jordan Peterson video the other day. This mug on there wanted to be called They. Jordan Peterson is one of their guys that they put out there. He's got an answer for everything, doesn't it? He's been the smartest guy in the room for 20 years, but he can't figure out the earth is flat and that capitalism, is very attracted to people in the mafia and crony capitalism, and it's good for laundering money. But he can't see one thing, that needs to change about it or anything. Smart man. I used to watch him. Now I don't. The Bible study. I guess all I have is this word pulled up from Strong's Greek. I'm going to take all of these down so that I don't have, tempted to go back and see what we have. There was one more, I guess. Centum and statum languages. We can track these two. I'm thinking probably Persian, but they're Indo-European family, but that's a pretty wide area, and getting down in there to where all of Asia departed Paul and things like that. So that's another group of type of languages that we can track them on. So they're good. Got all of those. All my tabs are done. I feel like, thank you, Lord. What's this word even about? Bleepo. I look, see, perceive, discern. So it's like, you know what that means. Like if you looketh on a woman with lust in your heart, you might as well be doing adultery. You know, that's hard for a lot of people because they show a lot of, you know, they're well, let's face it, they're pushing it's sex is better than God. So that I was somehow it'll come back to me what I was doing with these words because we're going to back up. The Father who sees what is done. Why do you look at the speck and you don't notice that if it's a speck in your eye, it's a mote to you because it's right there blocking your vision. It says, look at a speck in your neighbor's eye, but you miss the mote in your own eye. So this could also be seeing in a spiritual level also, I think, have to look for that context. Some people have eyes to see now because God opened them. And the first thing that we have to do is trust the scripture and realize, like, wow, it's really that simple that they really don't know what they're doing. They hear something different and see differently than the way that we do. It would appear that but where did I come from on this? I thought that was it. Mark 4:24. Because I only had, for the Bible portion study tonight, I only had my whole notepad is for tonight, because usually I'm like, well, I've got dozens of notebooks filled up and just one page tonight. Mark 4:24. Hopefully it's good because, it'd be easy because remember, like, well, now John 4:24 is easy to remember because it's so important. God is a spirit. Those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So, maybe this is, for some reason I was just thinking, and probably because I was listening in the English Standard Version while I was just doing some housework. And he said to them, pay attention to what you hear. And I know that so many of you are like me in that we need almost that constant stimuli going. You wake up, boom, who's put out anything new on YouTube? Check the news wire, see has China attacked Taiwan yet? What's going on and things like that. We're all, wound up right now. And how could we not be? I mean, we just lost this major war that started because of 9/11, and there's people like me going around like 9/11 marks the end of the world. 45 years from then, we all are going to die or be rescued by God, So the world is full of people just keeping you going like, well, you should see what this guy says or that guy says or whatever. And then here I ended up like going like, here I am always trying to get you to hear weird things. And then it's like, I still am going, I get grief because I tell people, man, I stay on the air long and play other people's videos because I'd rather you be here listening to this because at least here, well, I'm basing my teaching reputation and thus my salvation on what I'm saying is true. And I really do believe it is. So and then I find out, well, you just saw it. It doesn't even mean here. It means see, look, remember, go forward back again here. We were looking up these words. Be careful what you hear. and I had opened it up, right? And then I had it opened up. I thought, well, where did I get to what you see? So this is definitely here. Well, come stay with me now, and we'll see how I got to the one of how you see, because this is one night one. We better go forward again. Now, was this in Mark 4:24? And he was saying to them, take heed. Oh, so I wanted to find out why it said take heed when the other ones were all see. And this one is like, be on your guard, be on your guard. That's the one, right? Is that the one where we had just looked at? So it's not that one. Yeah, this is the one who sees. We just looked at that. Seeth in secret, looketh on a woman to lust. Wasn't that the first one? So let's go down to Mark 4:24. Take heed. It's not we've left off the seeing things. In Mark 4:12, look at that one. It's like, while seeing, they may see and not perceive. Thank you, Lord, that you haven't left us in that boat. Oh, thank you, Father. Thank you so much. So watch out. Beware of the leaven. Take heed. See. At least in this version. But, if you ever, whatever Bible ones you want to go to, but if you do use the Bible Hub, you can always go down and just see, did they keep this a pretty straight root word? And they sure did. So this obviously has, just like tenses in our languages or all of the other languages, you could say, you know, close your eyes and just imagine, hearing a well done, my good and faithful servant. And, you can just see the joy in that person and all around them. We can visualize it. And then there's like, hey, do you see that army coming over the hill? We got to run, So there's a lot of different ways you can use the same word. And that's part of our job. That's part of our duty to get down to it, because I don't think they've done their best at translating the scriptures for us. Thank the Lord we have the word written on our heart. Well, let's go back then and just keep looking at this other version of, so we got the see and hear. This is that also, I guess, in Mark 4:24. Take heed what you hear. So this is how what you hear. The faculty of hearing. You're not deaf. To attain to, consider what is or has been said. Understand, perceive the sense of what is said. So we have to see what's being said in the Bible and do our best to understand it. Not a lot of, controversy in that. But we wanted to do Mark, a Bible study at Mark 4. Hey, did I do it wrong? pay attention to what you hear. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and still more will be added to you. For to the one who has, more will be given. And from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Mark 4, verse 26. And he said, the kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground. That's how you broadcast seed. You throw it out. He sleeps and rises night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows. He knows not how. The earth produces by itself first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. But when the grain is ripe at once, he puts in the sickle because the harvest has come. And he said, with what can we compare the kingdom of God, or what parable shall we use for it? It is like a grain of a mustard seed, which, when sown on the ground, is the smallest of all the seeds on the earth. Yet, when it is grown, it grows up and becomes larger than all the garden plants and puts out large branches so that the birds of the air can make nests in its shade. We're going to keep reading the Bible. I just want you to rest assured that don't listen to what they say, and that's not the smallest seed. It's not the smallest seed. It is to the smallest seed. We don't count spores, and that's what they have to do when everything you've always heard, like, well, we know now that's not the smallest seed. We don't count spores, all right? I don't understand spores and that whole matrix that the mushrooms grow out of. What is that, mycelium or something like that? But it's not a seed. The doggone mustard seed is the smallest seed that you can deal with when you're planting plants. Plants, not spore plants. So these were, with many such parables, he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. He did not speak to them without a parable, but privately to his own disciples, he explained everything. So he did not always speak in parables. He taught in parables, but not always. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him, and a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains. But he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now, a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him. They are the legion of demons in this man, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. About 2,000. Of about 2,000. That seems pretty consistent. What did they have here? But it basically is a one-time use, 2,000, about, because they do have words for about. And they can make it very clear if they want to use this word about, as unlike very many words, and this is one of those ones where about is used a lot of different, throw in single timed usage. It's not as clear cut as that other word I just showed you. When you go like, boy, that root is solid. That looks like that's what it means. So we should, we'll see as, even as. This whole thing was just, you are not to be like as. The size of, as a mustard green, mustard seed, mustard green. So back to this word, it's 2,000, because we know what chillery means. It means 1,000. That means 1,000. And unless it has the prefix for two to mean two. And what does it really mean? It basically really means 2 times 10 times 10 times 10. Because that's what chillery means. 10 cubed. You do remember, I wasn't showing that. Just a minute, let me get back to you. I just proved something fantastically without anybody seeing it. Great job. Distillery means 2,000 from dis. Doubly, twice, and then there's more with a asterisk. twice dead. The cavalry was twice 10,000, so that's 20,000. Now, isn't that interesting? Look at Mark. And immediately for the second time, a rooster crowed. Now, what did I just read? Crow tries twice. It said the rooster twice crows 3 times. So we might have to go back and look into that one, because that's why did they put it in there 3 times? You see, they all are just trying to confuse him. There's twice, so there is that word for twice. Before the rooster twice crows 3 times. That just means 3, I bet. You know, but there's a big difference between when I find things like that. You know, it's going to work out in favor of God and proving the Bible. It's not going to be like, oh, the Bible's working, it's a contradiction or this or that. No, it's going to be explaining contradictions and helping us to get back into it and do it right. Now, let's see here. You're not interrupting, John or Matt, not at all. Yeah, man. I don't expect you to take my word for it. I'm ready to debate and discuss and get down to the whole, let's figure this out, man. Because you know that's how we're supposed to be spending our time. See if I can remember where I was. This was I remember that's a rabbit trail. So yeah, it was 1,000. This one here of so is that is it does mean twice. So the 2,000, and they always talk about how 1,000 isn't really used that much in the Bible with Chillery, but well, here's now at least one more time where the same thing, you know, teaches us that if they want to put it, you know, an adjective in front of it to mean two or about, I'm sorry, about or two or a couple, they have it. But when they do it, and they say it's 1,000, it's always the 10 times 10 times 10. It's a cubed 10. It is when it talks about 1,000 years, because it's talking about a satanic jail sentence. You're sentenced to 1,000 years. 1,000 years because of the God, the creator, who's so into clocks. It probably is like a day to him. That's a clue for us somewhere. We don't know how to use it right now. At least I don't think we do. The only way I can use it successfully is that God expects us to be as patient in him as he is obviously very, very patient. So here's your basic word studies help. 10 in scripture can be readily expressed, meaning completely, This word is as a cube of 10, 1,000. Powerfully expresses the full inclusive. And we know that these people went for 1,000 years. It's 1,000 years. And if it was 1,200, they know you're going to see a Chillery and then the 200. They're laying out prison sentences, and they're laying out, like in Revelation 14, distances of how big God's temple is going to be. And I think he's pretty exact when he does his measurements of a stadia. He doesn't want you to say, well, it could be 1,000 years, or it could be 2,000, or it could be more. No, when they talk about it in the Bible, we've got to say it means what it says, 1,000 years. That's so important for the whole mud flood was Armageddon theology, and for properly looking at and reading the Bible. Because it is true that 1,000 and the 1,000-year range is mostly talked about in Revelation. 20 verse 7, 20 verse 6, 20 verse 5, 20 verse 4, 20 verse 3, 20 verse 2. Revelation 14, 20, the one with the stadia. Revelation 12 verse 6. Revelation 11 verse 3. Peter 3:8, twice. But that doesn't mean, oh, it's only used in the book of Revelation, but the word can't be more explaining what it means, why it was a prison sentence. Because this is not vague. This is a vision. He saw this happen. The beast and the false prophet in 1924 and 25 are captured alive and thrown into it. Or it's 1920. And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet, who in his presence had done the signs. Here's the two guilty marks. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire and sulfur. And then somebody that the Bible went out of its way to make sure we understood it was an exactly 1,000-year prison sentence. And he sees the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil, and bound him for 1,000 years. There's no argument. There is no about 3,000 years. They know how to say that. He had about 1,000 demons in him, you know. Or it was about 2,000 hogs. That's what it was. There was 1,000 demons, because they probably work in tens, hundreds, and thousands also. The bad part is everybody doesn't want to realize, because when you talk about somebody that could be infected with 1,000 demons and then realize, wow, he's going to be released when the 1,000 years are ended, and that possible demon possession could be back in play. Even mass hypnotism, spells cast on TV show records over the barrels before they put out chemtrails. We don't know what they're doing to us, but we know it's nefarious. It's all bad. They have nothing good. Their tender mercies are hate. It says the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. So they're supposed to be in verses 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Let's find them. Then I saw the thrones, and seated On them were those to whom the authority to judge was committed. Also, I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the testimony of Jesus and for the word of God, and those who had not worshiped the beast or its image, and had not received the mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ for exactly 1,000 years, coinciding with Satan in a pit for exactly 1,000 years. These things are all happening at the same time. The rest of the dead, they didn't do diddly, not diddly squat. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. That same prison sentence involving with them. And then they call that, this is the first resurrection. Verse 6, blessed and holy is the one that shares in the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him for 1,000 years. And when the 1,000 years, the exact 1,000 years, that prison sentence time, are ended, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their numbers like the sand of the sea. And they are going to do what? They're going to march over a broad plain of the earth, surround the camp of the saints, the beloved city. Fire is going to come down from heaven and consume them. But the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were already. And how long had they been there? Exactly 1,000 years. And is it the Antichrist? No, it's the beast and the false prophet, because even John said at that point there were already many Antichrists. And then after all of that 1,000 years, what's happening? Here you go, man. That short time that Satan's released, these guys, well, I should say, to make it more specific, that the beast and the false prophet were in there for at least 1,000 years before Satan was loose, but Satan didn't join them then, because we have to go to Daniel chapter 7 to get the time periods correct. Because this is how it was sealed up until our time. In verse 9, he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. And from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be the 1,290 days. Well, there is the 1,000 days. This 290 must be part of the short time that Satan is loosed. It reads as this: from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,335 days. But go your way till the end, and you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of days. So that tells me that he's not part of that blessed first resurrection either, that made it for the ruling and reigning during the 1,000 days. But he's waiting, like the people alive now are waiting for those blessed last 45 years. For it's going to be another rescue. It's going to be a type of rapture experience where people alive will be waiting and rescued by the Lord. Now go your way to the end. Is that an era? This is only used 2 times. This says in the process of time, at the end. At the end of the 40, at the 40 days, at the 40 years, at the end of every 7 years. So at the, this word means specifically at the end of this, the next. This is not an age. This is definitely an ending. I don't need that anymore. So that is the same word. Don't need that one anymore. Wonder what this means, rest. Kind of a pretty steady root word. To rest. And rested, be at peace. The ark rested. Your donkey may rest. That's what Balaam in is this talking ass, I think. Or was that Numbers 22? So Daniel's going to be entering into his rest. There's going to be the 1,335 days after 40 years. Something's going to happen. And I think that it's 40 years after 9/11. That's where I'm at. Now, if you have any questions or anything like that, it's an hour and 33 minutes right now. I'll stick around. Let's see. You can put your questions in the comments, and we'll just see if there's we'll do that same thing. We'll watch that video one more time.
We are in Moscow in the Soviet Union times, and we see how people were moving buildings on railway, like on the same type of track that trains would use or similar, and they would move buildings from one place to the other, or they would move an old building to build a new, more like uglier building. And my question is, was this technology there beforehand? Like, were these buildings built previously on top of these tracks, or did they build them afterwards? Or some of the buildings are actually old style, but some of the buildings are actually communist style. And I've seen this in America as well, in Australia, so it's not the only place. So my question is, why is nobody doing this today? How come the humanity of the 80s and 70s, maybe the 60s, because those were the Soviet Union days, how come they were...
He's talking 1960s and 1970s. They claimed they were doing this in Russia. And we thought they were all starving together, terrible times.
Doing this, and they were moving buildings. Why were they moving buildings? And today they're actually demolishing them. Why? I don't understand. And how come did they have this technology back in the day? Like, and why not today? So many questions arise. Anyway, you see, you have the pictures, some better than the others. I'm sure you're probably going to find more, but you tell me, because I don't have any explanation on why they would do this. Why not demolish everything? I mean, they demolished so many of the old buildings that they were using like free energy, that free electromagnetic energy. They were just demolished. Why didn't they move those buildings? Like, just move them and that's it, and then you have them for the rest of your life. Um, and then they say that the Soviet Union was all bad. I mean, look at that. Where did you see this technology of moving entire buildings? And imagine that in those buildings, they were like, the apartments and places, the residences of people with all the belongings and stuff. And you just move a building like that. You just move, and that's it. I'm just wondering if why they were moving these buildings, the glow bird spinning in space with curved water and gravity was spinning, and these guys were moving the buildings while the earth was spinning, and the buildings were not falling because they were like be attached to the surface of the earth, which is a curvature with gravity. Yay, bravo! I respect for the glow bird.
He has no respect for the globe Earth. I don't know why he did that. That's just not like him. Let's we'll look at one of his other videos just to, well, you guys, if you want to think of some questions.
This here is called the Labyrinth. You've seen this before. This is actually a place in the United States of America, I think. But I'm going to show you more stuff right now, so you understand really simple and really easily and really fast what we are and where we live and all that stuff, and what the importance of energy and electromagnetic fields. So this is what you see. So then we've seen this here, and this is what you see in a cathedral, in a church. Why do you see this in a church? Churches and cathedrals and temples, doesn't matter what kind of religion, they are not for religious purposes. They are energy stations, energy power generators and stuff. And the floor of many of these places was originally built with metal. Why? And now let's see something which is part of a circuit, your typical circuit that we have in today's modern age, which is something the standard norm after the in the second part of the 20th century and so on. And after that, so again, do you see something? It's the same stuff. It's the same, exactly the same thing, which means that this is actually very important in electronics and electricity and electromagnetic fields and stuff. So let's see. The dome, the energy and lighting device, all the big buildings are for extracting the energy through the antennas, which are, by the way, Christian crosses or Islamic crosses or whatever other stuff in the Hindu and religion and stuff. I'm not a religious person, so I don't really follow that, but now I understand the whole thing with energy and the devices and the buildings and stuff. Now let's see something which is going to be mind blasting, mind blowing. You put the circuitry on both sides on what we have for the the typical motherboards and stuff, and the churches and cathedrals and temples. And we've seen so far in other videos that we as human beings, we are
That really is. That's crazy. And I don't know where this church or cathedral is, but that's a perfect match, except for these spoke type things that are coming out of it.
biorobots. We have iron in our blood. Our blood contains metal, iron, and that's one of the reasons why blood is so irony when you it has that iron feeling to it when you taste it, and salty, and also because of the salts. And we have our neurons work with electromagnetic impulses, so we are pretty much like robots, like biological robots, and we emit glow, we emit energy. So again, do you see my point here? You see the whole thing, the whole system, and we live in this crater Earth, which is flat, which is covered by a dome, and it has like a central magnetic energetic field that goes around in a vortex. Everything makes sense once you open your mind and you understand. That's of course too much.
So he's not a flat earther, or he is a flat earther, but he's an Atlantean. He's not a Bible believer, but he puts out some crazy things. So yeah, Matt, I wish I could. Tommy thinks it has to do with the money and the technology. We know from Ezekiel 38, the other things. It's kind of vague. We know it was he was a prince related to Gomer and things like that. We know that there was he was there was something, but what exactly, we're encompassed about right now by everything from the music we hear, the TV we watch, the air we breathe, the water we drink is poisoned, the food we eat has been poisoned. We're encompassed about right now, and that's Gog and Magog. So let me put it, if anybody has any questions, you can come in, and sometimes it's better to just come in and ask them, because we don't, I don't know who you're talking about. Yeah, if you're talking about the guy Divergent, yeah, he's very anti-Bible. He kind of reminds me of Central America's version of now I'm drawing a blank on his name, but it's not Derizian, but it's a guy like that talks all about flat earth, but he just hates the Bible too. But he loves Atlantis and flat earth, and maybe it's hollow, this and that. Yeah, I'm certainly not promoting any of those guys. It'd be like Eric DeBay or something like that. So are there any more questions? That labyrinthine thing, they're all faking things from trying to make it look like the Bible. Well, I don't want to end the show, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to look up, and I guess I'll show. I have this other channel. We'll just watch a video from that. What did I call that channel? We'll see what the most popular video is on this backup channel.
The Boston Massacre, they call it. That's Jesus sporting a robe. Stick around if you want to watch some other videos. I've got, do you see that headdress that guy's got on? I can show you people like that with the Indians of America and the, what do they call them? The Hussars of Poland. Both wore feathers in their hair. The Lord and his mom. Okay, I like earrings too. Nice earrings. Stay with the gold.
What did this is the end of the video. Sorry about that. You got no context.
And brought us the unibrow. Not the unibrow. I forgot what they really called it. We'll find out in 8 to 10 seconds. Welcome, everybody, to Flat Earth Nation. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. It's unimate, not unibrow. Roll it.
ये इस तरह का एक कॉन्सेप्ट रखा जिसके अंदर लोगों को इंसेंटिव दिया गया और हेल्थ फूड को बेचने के लिए उसकी सेल को इंक्रीज करने के लिए उसके लिए डायरेक्ट सेलिंग मॉडल का यूज होने लगा। उसके बाद 1951 में एक टपरवेयर
1951 Tupperware, the very first multi-level marketing plan scheme was in 1885. The Southwest publisher, they used door-to-door selling. That was the business-to-customer model, quickly followed by Avon, I believe, 1910, Credit Association. 1930s, the Stanley Home Products. 1945, Neutral Light. 1951, Tupperware, perfecter of the IBM punch cards and also introducer of the Ultimate, or actually it's the first big company that I knew of that used the Ultimate in these recent studies, was the first industrial robot, which worked on a General Motors assembly line at the Island Fisher Guide plant in Ewing Township, New Jersey, 1961. We're learning this together. Tupperware was in business for 10 years or so without it. It was invented by a George Duvall in the 1950s using his original patent filed in 1954, granted in 61. That patent begins. The present invention relates to the automatic operation of machinery, particularly the handling apparatus, and to automatic control apparatus, not apparati, suited for such machinery. Badoom, check this out. The Unimate also appeared on the Tonight Show hosted by Johnny Carson, on which it knocked a golf ball into a cup, poured a beer, waved an orchestra conductor's baton, I believe that would have been Al Severinsen at the time, and grasped an accordion and waved it around in 2003. Unimate. The Unimate was inducted into the Robot Hall of Fame. We don't have time to get into it. Fictional robot called Unimate appears in the DC comic line. The original old Unimate consists of a large computer-like box joined to another box and was connected to an arm with systematic tasks stored in a drum memory. Physical sketch of the Unimate. Just putting a time on it, because when you can put a time on things like that, you can put a time on what is Greek, symposium, the ancient Greek. We're not looking for any of the other uses of symposium. We're looking for the ancient Greek, where these things get started. Greek symposium means to drink together. To drink together. I'm saying they're going to spin it towards Bacchus. Was part of a banquet that took place after the meal, something they used to talk a lot about in the Roman times, but don't anymore, about the purging, whatnot, when drinking for pleasure was accompanied by music, dancing, recitals, or conversation. Literary works that describe or take place at a symposium include two Socratic dialogues, Plato's Symposium and Xenophon's Symposium, as well as a number of Greek poems, such as the eulogies of the theologians of Megara. In a modern use, it has come to mean an academic conference or meeting, such as a scientific conference. Well, that's where I usually put it on. I've been to a symposium and was never even offered a drink. The equivalent of a Greek symposium in Roman society is this word that we see all the time, convivium, Hellenistic societal institution. I'm going to be trying to get to this info was coming fast and furious in waves all day. Don't know how much we're going to be able to get through at one time, but I know we're going to Etruscan here relatively shortly. Symposia were usually held in the andron, a big hall, a gymnasium type of a situation, the men's quarters of the household. Participants or symposiasts would recline. Reclining on pillows was a big deal in their time. I remember a few other famous reclining moments where the next one who dips his bread in my stew is going to be the one who betrayed me, said the Lord Jesus Christ. You know what? Let's just save that bandwidth. Symposia were often held for specific reasons. You know, usually the most famous of all was the dialogue. It was hosted by the poet Agathon on the occasion of his first victory at the theater contest. According to Plato's account, the celebration was upstaged by the unexpected entrance of the toast of the town, the young Asabaides, dropping in drunken and nearly naked, having just left another symposium. What? So here's some symposium stuff. This is just like one of those like, what? Who knew? Symposium. Because, you know, I'm trying to get to something, right? It's got to be something. I'm trying to get to the Etruscans. What do we got here? Fabrito. Really? That's as big as this picture gets? You know, I like my pictures like I like my cups of coffee. Big. We're leaving that page. There you go. Remember how Doug Bartles used to go, why do you always do that? You're starting at the bottom. Then he started making videos and he's there like, oh, you leave the tabs open when you're done studying. And then when you go back there, oh, I get it now. You'll get it now. Because like, I'm going to just diffuse that argument. Everybody thinks that I think I'm the only prophet. No, I'm just one of them. I'm the one you're listening to right now. But there's got to be those other, what is it, 2,000, 6,000 out there. But who are you listening to now? Let's talk about Etruscan art, not just in Berlin, but around the world. The first one that have the girl Etruscan and the guy Etruscan reclining together, it says perhaps at a wine banquet because there's a complete lack of wine to be found on the sculpture site. So they were just happily reposing Etruscan culture, antiquity for beginners. Diving into Etruscan history is easy since so little is known about them. We cannot locate the grave of even a single Etruscan king. Well, maybe you're just calling them something different. No writing, no poems, no Homer. The Romans eventually broke away from Greek authors and literatures and developed their own. Horace, for example, but not the Etruscans. They're the misstripped people of the world. They've got sarcophagus. They've got bracelets that Goliath could wear. That's my belt. That's a belt for me. Look at this. This is a lion necklace. It's a circa 650 BC. So they say. Babylonian? No. They say there's some X-rated type stuff in some of those frescoes in the Etruscan tombs. Both men and women wore gold, gilded, and jeweled bracelets, armbands, necklaces, and tiaras. The artisan would heat the gold and affix it by a technique of granulation into patterns on a gold base. Unfortunately, since no kilns or goldsmith workshops have been found, modern archaeologists cannot entirely recover these Etruscan.
Was I not showing that video? Doggone it. Hey, did I have a Forrest Gump moment? I apologize for that. Thank you, Six, for sticking out. Are you off grid? Oh no, I'm retired. I'm a full-blown retired individual. As a matter of fact, I actually made enough money in my life to where I retired when I was 54, but I gave and spent all of that money on the ministry, and now I'm I'm 63, so I retired and I just get very small amount to live on, and live at my little brother Tommy's house. But I want to be off grid. Pretty soon we're going to have to go off grid. We're going to have to leave, wherever there's this 5G stuff, and we'll just have to go and find a way to make things work. I really am sorry because I wanted to be playing that video, and I hoped that, I'm glad you guys sticked around, and didn't want to be smoking weed and stuff like that, where you guys were looking at me while I was watching a video. But anyway, this video is pretty good. I mean, I was really focused on this. How old was it? That's what I forgot to do, was click the share. So I made this on December 9th. Just wanted to spend some time. So not even a year old.
Techniques. What? No forensics. The forensic shows on a TV that have all of those tracking abilities, the NCIS and all of that. Yep. Men and women of the wealthy upper classes dressed alike, both donned a long kibana, precursor to the Roman toga. Oh, man. Sure it was. The Etruscan language, that's where we're going. What is it? The Etruscans borrowed the Greek alphabet okay, to write down their own language. I've been trying to sneak a sip of coffee there. What was the language? Mostly we know what it is not Indo-European like Greek or Latin, not related to the Basque, Hungarian, Finnish, or other orphan trained languages that are being stomped out without mercy, without an understanding of their own language. Etruscans' X-rated culture is more opaque to us than our other long ago. Opaque means that it's hazy to see through. Here's a folded linen codex book on an Etruscan sarcophagus. What is a sarcophagus? That sounds Egyptian. And a folded linen codex, well, those are not that rare. The Zagreb mummy, the Egyptian female Nessie Hinsu. Wow, she looks big. I mean, look at she looks tall. I want her on my volleyball team. The Etruscan linen book unfolded, close up of the Etruscan letters on the linen above that was wrapping the Egyptian female. Okay, we got to keep going. Here's a close up of it. Here's the National Museum, just a mudflood building that they, hey, look what we got, a National Museum, because listen to the story here of this linen, the mummy of Zagreb, linen shroud. It's currently in the National Museum of Archaeology in Zagreb, Croatia. The shroud was originally a codex book made of linen. At some point in time, the folded book was cut into strips to use as a shroud. For an Egyptian female mummy, her name was Nessie Hinsu, wife of a divine tailor from Thebes in Peter Hansu. Folded linen codex. The Etruscan letters were written in black ink, and the columns were marked with a thin line of red ink. No mention of any Tartarian tattoos. They find them on the Tartarian princes, as usually they've all been found with that sensimia.
Look, they have this article got written with a typo in there. It's spelled marked M-A-K-R-E-D. Marked with a red thin line. Come on, that's something I would do.
Yeah. How did an Egyptian mummy enshrouded in one of the few recorded Etruscan documents end up in Croatia? Good question. In 1848, many Europeans revolted against anything and everything the oppressive and authoritarian regimes of their day, much like the American colonists had done a mere 75 years earlier. Well, wow, 75 years earlier than us right now brings us right back to the invention of the Tupperware robot. So anyway, this guy, he's just traveling around, but these Europeans lost, and one of them, a Croatian nobleman named Akelbrich, escaped to Egypt. Okay, we're going to hear a different story real soon.
Okay, I'm going to show you that Tupperware. See, because I don't think I had it on, when I was showing, the history of the Tupperware, and that it basically, the big deal was the Unimate was this first robot that could grab an arm. Their patent filed in 1954, granted in 61, but that was the big deal. So I might refer back to that, and I know I messed that up. There was that stuff about the symposiums. Some earlier Etruscan art. I just wanted to make sure that we were all up to speed, because I appreciate you being here. This is weird, the bronze liver of Pisenza. Hope I cover that.
That you wouldn't be looking for a half toga. Come on. Oh my goodness. Probably a female, I guess. And here's that bronze liver of Pisenza. We've done whole shows or portions of them just on that. 4 important divisions or events the Etruscan diviner called a Hrupspex if male, or Nethra if female, would sacrifice a sheep according to strict rituals. After examining its entrails, the diviner mapped the surface of its liver into sections of the sky. Perfect alignment was everything. So I guess they did them and they matched up perfectly. And you can trace those people, you symposium hunters. There's that picture. There's the mummy. Now let's just get the history. Mummy bought during his visit to Egypt in 1848, 1849. His brother, Yia, donated it to Yugoslav Academy in 1862. It is now permanently stored in Croatia. This is a German Egyptologist discovered an inscription he did not know belonged to the Etruscans. In 1891, the Viennese professor and Egyptologist Dr. Jacob Kroll discovered that the mummy's bandages actually hid the longest preserved Etruscan inscription in the world. During the 1980s, the bandages were thoroughly restored, reconstructed, rephotographed with infrared rays and the paleographic analysis and radiocarbon determined its age at about 400 years before Christ. Putting it in my time schedule, that would mean that it is 1730 years approximately. Where's the part about the guy stored it in his house? canvas was about 1,030 words, preserved in 5 subsequently cut scripts that wrapped the Egyptian mummy. The Egyptian mummy. The length of the whole book was 340 centimeters, and the width at the widest strip is 35 centimeters. The text is arranged in 12 columns with different numbers of rows from 26 to 36. It is supposed to contain a series of ritual regulations about symposiums and when and where and how you're supposed to throw up. I'm just kidding. It's known as the Liber Lientius Zagrabianus, and it's the longest Etruscan text. The fabric of the book was preserved when it was used for mummy wrappings in Ptolemaic Egypt. A little more look at the phoenix there. Well, the mummy was bought in Alexandria in 1848, and since it's been in that thing. And then, so here it was. Here they call him, in 1848, old Mike was a low-ranking Croatian official in the Hungarian Royal Chancery. He resigned his post because that's what they do. And he says, I'm going to take a tour of several countries because that's what you are probably planning to do right now too. And he just, one of them was Egypt. And while he was still in Alexandria, who knows, maybe the library hadn't been burned down yet, he purchased a sarcophagus in Egypt. Had a female mummy, and he took it home, displayed it in his home, standing it upright in the corner of his sitting room. At some point, he removed the linen wrappings and put them on display in a separate glass case. And somehow he ended up donating a cat, mummy, and something else. William Sherwood Fox was a Canadian classical scholar. Notable positions in his academic career include assistant professor at Princeton from 1911 to 1917. Wait, born in 1778? That's pretty young to be a professor, and then boom, moving right up to the Western University of London, Ontario.
It's 33 years
Well,
old.
anyway, I've got his PhD dissertation here, and let's see what it's about. The tabulae definitions of Johns Hopkins University. In the year 1908, the Department of Classical Archaeology of the Johns Hopkins University, and those are two last names, Johns and Hopkins, that founded that, acquired several tabula definitions, properly known as curse tablets. That's where we were going. They were written in that Etruscan language. And they were doing that magic and witchcraft cursey stuff. That's what it was. That's what it was. And he wrote his, he got his PhD because of this. Through the study of the tablets themselves has led to the conviction that they did actually originate in the city of Rome. This point will be fully discussed at the proper time. The tablets were in two distinct divisions. One of these consisted of a nail, 0.127 meters in length, the point of which was cloven into two long, sharp splinters, each half as long as the whole nail, about the broad head, were tightly bound by a thick accumulation of rust, meaning exceedingly thin fragments of lead. On one side, 25 layers could be counted. On the opposite side, 28. The greatest width of these were, but well, what were they? What were they? Besides what color? They were curses dug out of a well. First step toward the reconstruction of the tablets was to select the loose fragments and read them. So it turned out on page 114 that he's come to the conclusion after getting to be Dr. Fox. There are many different formulas for these curses employed, and these vary according to whether a deity is asked to consign the victims to the lower regions or whether the author of the curse does so directly without such an appeal. The verb trado is used as it happens in both cases. Tre plutone, with an appeal to the god, the trado, where the cursor performs the action himself. But they are, I kid you not, they were getting the curses and throwing them in a wells, and it wasn't that long ago. Let's keep going here. This is a Roman-led curse tablet, one of the ones that they found. This particular tablet from the Johns Hopkins collection was found rolled together with 4 others. The Latin name for a curse is defixio, which means to pin down, while the individual tablets are stand-ins for the
I
cursed
see that I forgot to read that that particular tablet was found rolled together with 4 others and pierced through with an iron nail. And that's pinning down the curse, I do believe. Well, let's see how, hopefully some of you people have stayed through and are enjoying it. You are. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And that link is still in here. You know, I'll hear it if anybody wants to come on and ask any questions. But so glad to see that everybody, that at least some people are here listening. I think this was a pretty good video. I'd like to get back to where I could, you know, not have to make every video live, but do some stop and go to that way, you know, cut out a lot of the times where it's nice to be live when you're interacting, but I could also premiere them and you could still chat also.
person. The nail symbolized their pinning down. All 5 tablets they have were written in Latin by the same hand. So curses are in Etruscan and curses are in Latin. They have these ones that were published in that dissertation that we've already looked at. I would have liked to know that it was that easy to get to. Let's see what we have here. What is a curse tablet? It's just going to talk about the Roman Greco world. The tablets were used to ask gods, place spirits, or the deceased to perform an action on a person or object, or otherwise compel the subject of the curse. There is a one right there. And there's another one of the 130 Bath curse tablets. The inscription in British Latin translates as, "May he who carries off Bilibia from me become liquid as the water. May she who so obscenely devoured her become dumb." Curses and curses, and they were doing curses. And you know what? We weren't supposed to be doing that. Jesus warned, hey, don't be doing that. Looks like George Gilbert Scott has taken center stage. Let's find out who he is. He was the Gothic revival. Oh, I know. We're going to be looking at a lot of revivals. Why did they have so many revivals? And if I'm changing gears here, if you think I'm changing gears here, it's only because I might be changing gears here, but we don't know that yet. This could all tie in to Etruscan languages, mummies. George, what are you here for? Who are you? Oh, revivals, workhouses, Albert Memorial, cathedrals, colleges, early works, parishes, doing this one here. He did good on that. Good work, George. Good work, George. Mr. George Gilbert Scott, founder of Watson Company. Well, it's a long one. Oh, he was a revival person. He must have done all of these public works. So we're looking at the revival heads and how it's just, again, their level of work is just crazy. He did all of them. Bridges, big bubbles, no troubles. How about a motel, hotel? They'll leave the light on for you. How about another hotel, hospital type? Well, redundancy and non-originality. His standard operating procedure just seemed like blow them away with oversized buildings that we call mud-flood antique architecture.
I hope you know I'm being sarcastic in that what I'm trying to say is no guy can be the architect of 800 different things. They just pick a guy and assign him.
One of those new words that we like. He show me the buildings. I'll design one a day for the rest of the month, and that'll be good for a week of building for you guys. I'll keep you all busy. Wow. Even restorations with other people. Who knew? And what he actually was doing was ordering out of a kit, just saying, look, let's just embellish this one up and boom, we'll do that. So what he was in charge of was buying the embellishments to redecorate the same old brick buildings that we Egyptians built. Renaissance revival architecture, please. Neo, sometimes Renaissance, a group of the 1800s architectural revival styles. It was neither Greek revival nor Gothic revival, but which instead a new, drawn inspiration from a wide range of classicizing Italian modes. That's your Renaissance revival architecture. And really, all I'm trying to tell you is that it's just what catalog they redecorated their mudflood buildings from. Yummy. Renaissance style. Renaissance flourishing Chateau de Chambord. A little bit of it, embellishments and flourishments, Moorish architecture to the bone. Going with no notes here, Romanesque revival. Copper top and a little less embellishment, but still it'll last. It's good enough. We'll keep the stiff upper lip we'll let to the party on redecorating some of our architecture, but we love it. We do everything. And we have it in the United States. We have it in Britain. We were the ones who didn't get embellished as much. Late to the party. Tartare. Moorish revival architecture. It's one of the exotic revival architectural styles that were adopted by architects of Europe and the Americas in the wake of the Romantic fascination with all things Oriental. What? In history, literature, and cultural studies, Orientalism is the imitation or depiction of aspects in the Eastern world. These depictions, usually done by writers, designers, and artists from the West. In particular, Orientalist paintings reached its height of popularity in the mid-1800s, part of a widening vocabulary of articulated decorative ornament drawn from catalogs, historical sources beyond familiar classical and Gothic modes. Neo-Moorish architecture drew on elements from classic Moorish architecture and the made-up religion of Islam architecture, which Is that the same picture? Just a little bit of a wider shot? Uh-huh. 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 Well, in this picture of that same thing, it mentions Moors twice. And it even calls it Moorish architecture. Here's the same picture cropped. No mention of it, I said in an Italian voice, because somebody said just a crop of the photo, it'll be okay. The Moorish gardens built in Norfolk in 1812 were an unusual touch at the time, a parallel to Chenery as a dream vision of fanciful whimsy, because that's what they could afford to do back then. It wasn't meant to be taken serious. Come on. It was just a wink and a nod to, hey, we like your stuff. Here's a Moorish castle in Fredericksburg, Alhambra. I think that's in Sweden. Are you in Denmark? What's the difference, right? Come on, bring it on. That Washington Irving, the catch-all of flat Earth. Oh, nobody ever believed in it. Well, he was also used to spread these fanciful tales in Tales of Alhambra, 1832. First brought Moorish Andalusia into readers' imagination, and the first neo-Moorish structures was Radistan. It was a Moorish revival mansion in Bridgeport, Connecticut. At this beautiful seat, Barnum played host to such famous contemporaries. Yeah, there's one born every minute if you're buying that one. Anybody. Anybody think that we need to take a harder look at the Alhambras, the Moors? Where were they? Who were they? Why don't we want to talk about it? They had a Moorish revival of architecture in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and that would explain why it's all Moorish. How much Moorish can you stand? Well, it depends on how much you want to understand and claim to be a truther, and I'll go where the truth leads me. Because they have all kinds of Moorish revival architecture. I couldn't show them all to you. We're taking our time, but we don't have that kind of time. As much as I appreciate you stayed with me this far, we've just started. We have to talk about High Victorian Gothic. It was an eclectic architectural style. It was seen by architectural historians as either a sub-style of the broader Gothic revival or a separate style in its own right. Well, styles, red bricks, white bricks, and Antiquitech. Here's one of the two Gothic-styled lanterns from Bath Abbey. And this one, of course, well, Sir George Gilbert Scott. He did everything. He got himself a knighthood. This champion of all things medieval worked on over 300 churches and cathedrals, including the big ones, Westminster and Bath Abbeys. He was directing operations in Bath for 14 years. I discovered this, one of the two such Gothic style metal and glass lanterns amidst the dust, just left to rust. Boom, de boom, boom, chaka boom. So what they're looking at more curse tablets, hopefully not trying to figure them out. Well. The timeline deception part 2 already twice as many views as my best video did last week. So we're going to be answering any questions, those parts when, you know, she and others that, you know, and I appreciate her work so much, and I'm answering these in hopefully the spirit that she's asking them, looking for answers. I've got some.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is the second part of my previous video where I explained an alternative view of human history and our place within it. If you haven't seen part 1, there's a link in the description below. In this video, I'll go over what I refer to as the dual timelines, and then I'll share some additional thoughts. Now that you're familiar with the timeline I explained in part 1, we're going to use a more simplified version for this video. You'll see that I'm throwing out a second resurrection date of 1820, but the exact date has not yet been confirmed. So to begin.
So that's where we'll begin. You know, she's saying 1919 because things get really weird around 1812. You know, I'm all about that too. But you got to back it up another 100 years between what they call 1666 and 1814, 1812. And I guess we have time to go over it live. We have only these clues that and she'll show you some, and she went over them strong in the her first video, which is just, you know, it's the way I would like to make videos, just short, concise, boom. The graphics match. What was I looking up? Daniel. He's a prophet, right? Yes, he is. And Daniel chapter 12 gives us our hint, our clue to the timeline, because it says that things are sealed up until the end of time. That's not the end of the age, the eons. We're not confusing. We're not getting into it. These are when many shall be purified, made white, and refined. And that's why when Revelation chapter 20 ends with the city and the rescue of Gog and Magog, boom, the next thing is, and books were open. It's a great white throne. And it says in verse 11, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, and that happened in 70 AD, they could no longer perform the daily sacrifices. They sacrificed a pig on it, and then they tore down every stone that was building it together. They had what was called the sacrifice taken away because of the abomination of desolation would be set up on it. And after that time, when the temple was destroyed, and Armageddon would rain upon them, because that was the end of that generation, and they would all see him return as promised. It says, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. But go your way till the end, not the end of any age, eon, era. This is the end, the end. It's completely clear. For you shall rest, and you will sleep, because you will sleep. And then when they open up, he's talking to Daniel. He's not one who was in the first resurrection, because he wasn't a prophet or a martyr at the time when the witness of Jesus Christ gets them. And you will rise to your inheritance at the end of the days, the end of the days. So there are two separations. There are the 1,290 days, and then another 45. If you focus on a point in history that recently, and we know changed, I consider it September 9th, 2001. And if you go back the 1,290 days, you would end up from at the year 2001 in that era between when they had the Julian calendar change and the Gregorian calendar change, and they.
What I'm basically trying to say is between 1666 and 1711, they messed up the Julian and the Gregorian calendar. Bear with me as I go rambling on nonsensically.
Flipped and boom, added that 1,000 years at that period. That leaves us with the 290. So there's the 1,000 years we can account for as the wheat and the tare grew together in that millennium. 290 days is what takes us back, because so like in math, those thousands would cancel each other. We're left with the 290.
So what I'm doing is taking 2001, September 11th, 2001, go back 290 years, that's 1711 in the Julian calendar. That's all I'm trying to say.
Of what we have as known history they've supplied. That's what takes us back to that calendar era. And from that time period of 2001, blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. You will be blessed. You will be blessed. And I'll show you how. In Revelation, that's not hard. You just go down to the last book on the list. And you got to aim a little bit closer here, because in chapter 20, it's not the end. Satan's bound. I believe, why don't we keep this book in order? The beast and the false prophet, those are the two people thrown into the lake of fire after the battle of Armageddon. Satan is given a different punishment first. He is, well, I'll just read it to you. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and cast him into a bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, so that he should deceive the nations no more until the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things, he must be released for a little while. Okay. And verse 7. Now, when the 1,000 years have expired, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for battle. Those whose number is as the sand of the sea. They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet already are. And they together will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Verse 11. And this is still just rolling with that same vision. Then I saw the great white throne and him who sat on it, and whose face the earth and heaven fled away, and there was found no place in them. And you know what they were going to do? And the dead were judged according to their works by the things which were written in the books.
Again, I believe that it's been easy for the enemy to deceive us about anything on the before Christ or BC timeline, because conveniently nothing is ever dated from this period. The people did not keep track of the year because there was really no anchor point. We can be told pretty much anything about artifacts from this time. I believe that the practice of keeping track of the year truly began in year 1 of the millennial kingdom. I believe this is the true meaning of AD, or the Latin phrase Anno Domini, which means in the year of the Lord. There's usually some variation of this phrase in old books and manuscripts. Because of the large amount of dated artifacts that have survived from the Millennial Kingdom, Satan has had to provide many cover stories for all of the evidence he couldn't destroy. He has told us that the phrase Anno Domini, or in the year of the Lord, means from the birth of Jesus. However, I believe that the true year one is the beginning of Jesus' kingdom here on earth. Since this period would last just 1,000 literal years, there was a reason to keep track of time, as you could say it serves as a countdown. During the kingdom, a 3-digit dating system was used, usually preceded by the letter I. It is believed that this letter I stands for Isus or Jesus, which means Jesus in Greek and Latin. There seems to be several other variations of the spelling and pronunciation of Jesus' name just within Latin alone, as well as other languages. Sometimes there are other characters that precede the 3-digit date, such as a J or lowercase I, as well as unfamiliar characters that may be derived from Greek, Aramaic, or Hebrew. One of the best ways I've found for finding examples of a non-numeric character in the year is by looking at genuine coins that have survived from the Millennial Kingdom. Here we have a coin that we would be told is from the year 1621. However, we see that the character in the first digit is different from the numeral 1 in the last digit, and therefore we can conclude that the first digit is not a numeral 1. Here we have another coin that we would be told is from the year 1700, but obviously the character in the first digit does not resemble a numeral 1, and there is a large space separating it from the 3-digit year. We can deduce that this coin is not from 1700, but the year 700 of the kingdom. Here we have another more subtle example, but we can see that the relief of the letter I in the date is more refined and congruent with the other letters, while the numerals are more consistent with each other. Again, we would be told that this artifact is from 1890, but I would determine the date on this coin reads I-890, meaning year 890 of the kingdom of Jesus. There are many more examples, and you'll have no trouble finding your own. It's one of those things where once you see it, you can't unsee it. Dating coins and other artifacts can be tricky, because beginning around the so-called 1800s, we begin to see artifacts that have been created by the enemy with a genuine numeral 1 in the first digit of the date. This is around the time that Satan was released from his prison and began the timeline deception. He began inserting false dates into all kinds of objects, including backdating inscriptions in books, on monuments and architecture, various works of art, and more. How exactly he pulled this off, I couldn't easily tell you. Lastly, one final example. If we had an object or event that was dated with the number 1900, that would be over here on the timeline in our little season. But if we found an object that was dated I-900, that would actually fall back here in the late kingdom. Conversely, if we have a pre-reset date such as 1500, that is generally the same year as I-500. If it seems a little confusing, well, it was meant to be, but you'll get the hang of it. In addition to the numeric dating system, the year was also commonly denoted in what we call Roman numerals. I have a feeling that perhaps Roman numerals are to be interpreted a little differently than what we've been told, but that's not something I'll be investigating right now. If you're someone who researches these sorts of things, then you're aware of what is regarded as the 1,000 years of added history that's been injected into our timeline. In all actuality, it appears to be about 800 to 850 years. I believe the entire reason that Satan has added approximately 800 years into our timeline is to once again provide a cover story for the things he couldn't destroy.
We know that is actually, it means exactly 1,000 years. Nobody's going to agree all the time with everybody, but she's got some good info in this.
As I showed just a couple examples of, there are innumerable artifacts that have the letter I or J preceding the year. We are told that an artifact dated I-500 would be the year 1500, but by doing so, a lot of fake and exaggerated history will need to be added in. This is all in a huge effort to hide the Millennial Kingdom from the people of our time. The more you learn about the true nature of our past, the more profoundly obvious it is that Jesus Christ is the ultimate truth, and it would definitely be a lot harder to go out and deceive the nations if we all understood we were riding off the coattails of Christ's kingdom.
Wow.
So with that being said, I believe that we're actually in approximately the year 1200. A more precise date can only be pinpointed by figuring out the exact year in the false timeline that the so-called reset took place. If year 1 truly begins with the start of the millennial kingdom, then 1,000 years have passed, plus the 200 or so years that we are already into the little season, putting us in approximately the year 1200. If we were to continue to base time off of the birth of Christ, then you would just add 70 years. This is how I see things for now, and I hope this helps you understand the dating system and how the two timelines relate to each other. Now I'm going to go through some additional thoughts and questions. In part 1, I said that the saints go up to heaven at the end of the kingdom. I said this to keep things simple at the...
No, this would be a good chance to check in and say hi, but also to look up saints and show you that it doesn't mean some sort of special hybrid type people that reign on earth living for 1,000 years. Saints only means holy or separated. So before she gets into it, I would really appreciate it if you guys can understand that. See, this is the word for saint, hagios, the holy. It's holy. It means holy, separate. That's what a saint is. It's used 59 times for saints, 92 times for holy with a capital H, 62 times just for holy. It's the word used for holy of holies. And it also means saint. It doesn't mean special being ever. It only means something separated. So this, let's see, this particular do we really have to look up all of the words? 235 times. That's just where we were. So let's look at them all, because I want to see where it says separate. So here's all of the different words. It's a pretty strong root. So it's all going holy right here. And now it's saints. And when they translated saints, there is, it can be a holy, separated loaf of bread. Well, that's, it's saintly, it's holy. And these are all New Testament, things. So whenever it calls the saints in the New Testament, where she's going with this, it means holy ones. Little dry spell, and where it says saints. But we know it says it in Revelation. The camp of the saints. It's the camp of the holy ones, the ones that have been separated for the use of God, not some mythical creatures, because it's the same word, blessed and holy, is the one who has a part in the first resurrection. Blessed and saintly. Now, keep that in mind. That is super important. This girl that we're watching, I think her name is Lauren. I'll show her channel when we get back to it. So let's get back to it. Now that you know that it's saints are not what she's talking about. Oh, maybe I'll add it to her later. I don't know. I think I forget what it's called. It'll come to me.
But I actually think that this may not be the case. The Bible states that the armies will surround the camp of the saints and the beloved city, indicating that they're here on earth somewhere. Perhaps the camp of the saints is located in a region we aren't allowed to explore. In part 1, I talked about the second resurrection and how those who took part in it were simply referred to as the rest of the dead. I'm going to describe this part in just a little more detail. I believe that these people lived before Christ was ever born, therefore they did not get the chance to make the choice of whether to accept or reject Christ. Accepting Christ is the only way to be grafted back into the spirit realm. It is an indelible law of the universe.
You see, you don't go around accepting Christ. You go around being brought from dead and made alive. Now, young lady, I'm talking to her. She is just taking the too flippant of the word uses for what is a saint and who are the rest of the dead. You can't just come on, hear, my theories and then run your own direction, and you don't even look at the root words and everything else. It's sad because she knows so much, but somehow they just got to jump to the front of the class.
In part 1, I talked about the second resurrection and how those who took part in it were simply referred to as the rest of the dead. I'm going to describe this part in just a little more detail. I believe that these people lived before Christ was ever born, therefore they did not get the chance to make the choice of whether to accept or reject Christ. Accepting Christ is the only way to be grafted back into the spirit realm. It is an indelible law of the universe. So these people who lived in the time before Christ had to be resurrected and given the chance to make this choice. This is the only logical theory that I've been able to surmise. It is my personal opinion that no one alive at this current time is part of that group. But then again, who knows? I haven't found anything in the Bible so far that indicates where the mortals at the end of the millennial kingdom go. One might assume that they keep on living into the little season, just as those who survived the tribulation kept on living as normal into the kingdom. But on the contrary, the early historical evidence often seems to point to the idea that the new people completely replaced the old people. However, it seems like there would be no continuity at all if one group was completely swapped out for another. Again, I'm honestly not clear on what exactly happened during the transition at the end of the kingdom. As we re-examine this period in time,
See, they get you with a couple of good videos, and then now it comes out. This is all pro-Catholic, maybe the saints are white people. Yeah, her channel is called Exploring Tartaria. Very sad. Pathetic.
All right, it's going to be hard for her. I'll answer that question, but I need you to hear this first, and I'll be addressing it because both of the questions will tie together.
I know that many Protestants will take issue with the depiction of the Catholic Church and the iconography associated with it. Since I became a Christian, which was in my adult life, I formulated the opinion that Catholicism was some sort of bizarre mixture between Christianity and paganism, and that many of these practices and beliefs were not biblical. I was also simultaneously perplexed as to how this belief system that supposedly had it all wrong created all of the most beautiful cathedrals and artwork. I was disappointed that all of the best works of art and architecture had to be off limits to me. However, I have completely changed my mind about that as I've gained a higher understanding of our past. I have separated the reputation of the modern-day Catholic Church from what was actually the evolution of Christendom through the messianic reign of Jesus Christ himself. The Catholic Church, or whatever it may have been called during that time, appears to be the most prestigious wing of the governmental system during the kingdom. Its higher offices, if not all of its offices, appear to be occupied by saints. It is the antithesis to the idea of separation of church and state. Furthermore, the belief systems of Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy both incorporate the new class of beings, the saints, who are the very first of their kind. They're like our big brothers and sisters who graduated before us, and they've played a part in this world ever since. These belief systems that were developed during the Millennial Kingdom give us insight on how they play a role in our lives.
Do you see now? I hope you understand. And in all, trying to warn her, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. You're going back to Rome?
The saints did not yet exist in the times of the Old and New Testament, so that's why there's nothing in there about them as different spiritual entities. The timeline deception has created a chasm between two sides of the same coin. As Christians, we know to be very careful with the spirit realm, so I'm not saying to jump straight into anything. But after discovering the true nature of our past, I have naturally begun to fall in line with what is generally considered to be Catholicism. Conversely, if you already subscribe to the general ideas of Catholicism, then with this new revelation, you're likely going to understand your own beliefs and where they come from on a much deeper level.
Okay. Wow. How did I start this? Where was my notebook? Here's the problem. That's not a white world. That's the whitewash. The Roman Catholic world. This should be a fad. Once you reconsider the whitewashing and what they did, the most noble form of Inquisition, the Moors have caused me more trouble in witnessing than probably anything I started off with. The treaty, all treaties with them, it's been whitewashed. How we whites broke every treaty on purpose. Their history, our history, whitewashed. Tom Sawyer's Fence, whitewashed. Black Hawk Down, Black Hebrew Israelites, whitewashed. And cursed is everybody on a tree. I know the lynching, it was due to happen. This is a judgment. We all know that. And we started with the computers of where we're at now. And anything and anybody that would lead you down the road to Rome is not your friend.
You will see that the Millennial Kingdom is rife with symbolism that you may find off-putting. However, I have begun to re-examine these things and be open-minded to the idea that they meant something else entirely, or that the characters may not be guilty of their crimes. During the time that we live in, or the little season, many of God's holy symbols and institutions have been usurped by the enemy, and thus their reputations have been sullied. I have begun to make the distinction that they had a different meaning within God's kingdom, and now have the opposite connotation within the little season. Lastly, one of the biggest questions that you may have is, why are the so-called Greek gods omnipresent throughout a Christian empire? I have some theories on how they fit in, and I'm looking forward to making videos about this in the near future. I don't want to spoil the fun, but know that I'll be addressing this question soon. So now that we have a good foundation laid, I'm looking forward to covering a range of topics from this perspective. I hope to share the Millennial Kingdom with you as during the onset of our new abnormal, I have found solace in exploring Tartaria. By gaining a deeper understanding of our past, I constantly learn new things about God, the spirit realm, and our true nature as human beings. I believe that all of the incredible works of art and architecture created during this time were not only for the people of the kingdom, but for the people of our time too. Furthermore, it gives us a glimpse into the aesthetical tastes of God Himself and gives us a sneak peek into the splendor of what we will be building and exploring on the new earth. In my opinion, this is a wonderful place to focus our truth-seeking inclinations, for the world at large will always be nonsensical and upside down until the last day. Thanks for watching.
And I want to thank you for putting out such a professionally narrated and exhibited in such high quality. And I want to just, I want to hope that you can take on the whitewashing and the true history of what's going on, the eugenics. And this is not a white thing. And the Roman Catholic age of dominion and age of discovery, those things, those topics are going to be right there waiting for you. I need you to see this as I wrap it up. A video from August 15, 2016.
Well, I just want to have a little fun, talk fashion, because the topic speaks for itself. There's black people, they're dressed like the royals of the day because they were the royals of the day. I'm not going to get into how all of history has been changed. I'm just going to talk fashion. Let's talk fashion. Look at those earrings. Nice. Nice. That's nice too. That's the first weave. Gold. You can't go wrong. Rose gold. What I tell you? Goes to gold. And the brooch on the head with it. Yeah, nobody's looking at you, buddy. This fashion. Do you like my hat? I said you like my hat. Yeah, I'm better looking than everybody else, so just deal with it. I can beat you in chess. Sucker. Knock it off, you too. Don't make me get my shirt dirty. There's a man. But for some reason that hat's working. Gold. And food. With the bow, he pulls it off. Oh yeah. No, I ain't playing you in chess. Forget about it. You spent how much? Like my hat? Does this blanket make my butt look fat? I'm king, damn it. So anyway, guy walks into a bar with a duck on his shoulder. Oh, it's hard to be the cutest girl in town. Damn it, this seal doesn't look anything like me. This coin doesn't look like me. Hey, what's that black guy doing surrounded by all those white guys like he's the king? What the heck? Let's talk fast. I can't see anything. Nice coat. Okay. Armor. They say it adds 10 pounds. Go with the gold. Don't mess with that guy. That's an example of how they changed history. They found that was the painting and they restored it and they found out it was a black guy. St. Augustine. St. Augustine. He is our hero. Yeah. Nice vestment. I like it. There's my man. Nice vestment. I love it. Study it, huh? Look at that hairdo. There's the first guy wounded in the Revolutionary War, the Boston Massacre, they call it. That's Jesus sporting a robe. Stick around if you want to watch some other videos I've got. Do you see that headdress that guy's got on? I can show you people like that with the Indians of America and the what do they call them? The Hussars of Poland. Both wore feathers in their hair. The Lord and his mom. Okay, I like earrings too. Nice earrings. Stay with the gold. Nice. Okay, what are you wearing, dude? Is that your Elizabethan and Russell or what? You like my hat, man? I asked you like my hat. I'll hit you with this.
Well, you can tell that that's what I was doing in 2015. I appreciate you people staying here tonight. I appreciate getting it out. And do I think that it's crazy to accept that there was ever a church that could draw and quarter people, kill people, torture them like that in inquisitions and call themselves Christians? Who wants to go with that? You know, who are the rest of the dead? What does it mean? Wow, after 3 hours, JP, it's too much to get into now. That is a big question. It has to be so many things right off the top of my head. I postulated it could be that since this is the very end, we're the last of the people who have a chance to be born again. So the rest of the dead who could be made alive, maybe we could take that off as a jumping off point, but we'll have to do something because, that was that's a big question and a big part of what's going on. So thank you all for sticking around. Don't forget to say your prayers. I hope you get some good sleep tonight. It's a flat Earth nation. I'm never going to tell you anything else. Why would I? I am have been trying to prove I have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho.